The howling wind carried snowflakes as large as silver dollars when Olivia Blackwell stepped off the stagecoach, her entire body trembling from the bitter December cold of 1876. She had traveled over 1,000 miles from Boston to the remote mining town of Granite, Colorado, to marry a man she had never met, a decision born of desperation after her family's financial ruin left her with few options. "Watch your step, miss," the stagecoach driver warned, his voice barely audible over the winter gale. "Worst blizzard we've seen in years." Olivia clutched her thin woolen shawl tighter around her shoulders, regretting her inadequate Eastern attire. The snowdrifts had already accumulated to her knees, and darkness was falling rapidly. Peering through the swirling white, she saw no one waiting for her, no sign of the man who had answered her advertisement in the matrimonial newspaper and promised to meet her arrival. Her heart sank. Had he changed his mind? Had the storm kept him away? Or worse, had this all been some cruel joke? Just as panic began to set in, a tall figure on horseback emerged from the whiteout. The man dismounted with fluid grace despite the harsh conditions, his face partially obscured by a well-worn cowboy hat dusted with snow. He approached with long, purposeful strides, leading a second horse behind him. When he reached her, he removed his hat, revealing striking blue eyes set in a weathered face. He couldn't have been more than 30, with a strong jawline softened only slightly by the short beard that covered it. "Miss Blackwell?" he asked, his deep voice cutting through the storm. Olivia nodded, unable to speak through chattering teeth. "Zachary Everett," he said, extending a gloved hand. "I apologize for the welcome. Had I known the weather would turn so fierce, I'd have come earlier." When she placed her trembling hand in his, he frowned with concern. "You're half frozen." In one swift motion, he removed his heavy coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. The sudden warmth of the sheepskin-lined garment nearly brought tears to her eyes. "Welcome home," he said softly, his breath visible in the frigid air. "Let me warm you before we make the ride to the ranch." From his saddlebag, he produced a flask and offered it to her. "It's just coffee with a touch of whiskey. It'll help with the cold." The liquid burned pleasantly down her throat as Zachary secured her small trunk to his second horse. Within minutes, he had helped her mount and swung up behind her on his own horse, one strong arm wrapped securely around her waist. "It's 5 miles to the ranch," he explained, his chest solid against her back. "Keep close. The storm's getting worse." As they rode through the blinding snow, Olivia wondered what kind of life awaited her with this quiet, stern-faced stranger. She had expected many things from her new life in the West, but a blizzard welcome hadn't been among them. The journey to Zachary Everett's ranch was arduous, with visibility reduced to mere feet ahead. Olivia clung to the saddle horn, grateful for the sturdy presence behind her as the horse navigated the treacherous terrain. Despite the howling wind, she could smell the leather and pine scent of the man who would soon be her husband, an arrangement made through carefully penned letters over 6 months. "There it is," Zachary finally announced, pointing toward a collection of buildings that emerged from the white void. "Everett Ranch." As they drew closer, Olivia made out a substantial 2-story cabin with smoke rising from its stone chimney, a large barn, and several smaller outbuildings. It was far more established than she had anticipated from their correspondence. They dismounted at the barn, where Zachary quickly led the horses inside. The relative quiet after the roaring blizzard was almost disorienting. The barn was warm with the breath of livestock, 2 draft horses, a few milk cows, and a row of stalls. "I'll tend to them later," Zachary said, ushering her through a path he quickly cleared toward the main house. "You need warmth first." When they burst through the front door, blessed heat from a roaring fireplace enveloped Olivia. The cabin was surprisingly spacious, with rough-hewn but carefully crafted furniture. A large bearskin rug lay before the hearth, and kerosene lamps cast a golden glow throughout the main room. "Sit by the fire," Zachary instructed, taking her trunk and placing it beside the stairs. "I'll make some tea." As he moved efficiently around the kitchen area, Olivia took in her surroundings. The walls were adorned with a few simple paintings of mountain landscapes. Bookshelves lined one wall, a surprising luxury in a frontier home, and everything was meticulously organized. "You have a lovely home," she said, finding her voice at last. Zachary nodded without turning from the stove. "Been working on it for 7 years, started with just the one room." He gestured to the space around the fireplace. "Added the rest as the ranch grew." He returned with 2 steaming mugs, offering one to her before sitting in the chair opposite. For a moment, they drank in awkward silence, the reality of their arrangement hanging heavy between them. "I know this is not how you imagined your arrival," he finally said, his eyes meeting hers directly. "And I want you to know that despite our arrangement, I expect nothing from you tonight. You need rest after your journey." Relief washed over Olivia, though it was tinged with a strange disappointment she couldn't quite name. "Thank you, Mr. Everett, that's very considerate." "Zachary," he corrected gently, "or Zach if you prefer, we're to be married after all." The word married hung in the air between them, a promise and a question all at once. "Tomorrow," he continued, "if the weather clears, we can ride into town to see the preacher, if that's still what you want." Olivia studied him carefully. His letters had been thoughtful and honest, describing his ranch, his work, his hopes for a partner in life. He had been forthright about wanting not just a housekeeper but a true wife, someone to share his dreams and help build something meaningful. There had been no flowery language or false promises, just practical plans and sincere intentions. "It is," she affirmed, surprising herself with her certainty. "That is, if you still wish it as well." A small smile softened his features, transforming his face from merely handsome to something that made her heart beat faster. "I do," he said simply. "Now, let me show you to your room. You must be exhausted." The bedroom he led her to was small but comfortable, with a handmade quilt on a sturdy bed and a small dresser with a mirror. A pitcher and basin sat on a washstand, and a single window, now frosted with snow, looked out toward the mountains. "It's not much," Zachary said, placing her trunk at the foot of the bed. "But it's yours for as long as you need it." "It's perfect," Olivia replied honestly, overwhelmed by the simple comforts after her long journey. "My room is across the hall if you need anything." "There's water in the pitcher and extra blankets in the chest there." He paused at the door. "Good night, Miss Blackwell." "Olivia," she corrected with a small smile, "or Liv if you prefer. We're to be married after all." His answering smile was brief but warm. "Good night, Olivia." After he left, she stood for a moment in the silent room, listening to the wind howling outside and contemplating the strange turn her life had taken. 6 months ago, she had been the daughter of a once prosperous Boston merchant, with certain expectations for her future. Now, she was in a remote cabin with a man she barely knew, about to become a rancher's wife. As she unpacked her meager belongings, a few dresses, some personal items, and a treasured photograph of her parents, she wondered if she had made the right choice. But when she recalled the gentleness in Zachary's eyes and the care with which he had welcomed her, she felt a cautious hope bloom within her chest. Morning came with a startling brightness that reflected off the snow-covered landscape and streamed through the window. For a disorienting moment, Olivia couldn't remember where she was. Then the events of the previous day rushed back, and she sat up quickly, listening for sounds of her host. She dressed in her most practical gown, navy blue wool with minimal bustle, suitable for a wedding, and pinned her auburn hair into a simple style. Her reflection showed a woman changed by the journey, less the refined Boston lady, and more someone prepared to face the realities of frontier life. Downstairs, she found Zachary already returned from morning chores, his coat and boots dusted with fresh snow. The aroma of coffee and frying bacon filled the cabin. "You're up," he said, straightening from the stove. "I wasn't sure when you'd wake, so I kept breakfast warm." "Thank you," Olivia replied, noticing how the morning light emphasized the golden flecks in his otherwise brown hair. I hope I haven't delayed your work. No delay. The blizzard's passed, but there's 3 feet of snow out there. Town will have to wait another day. He gestured to the table already set for 2. Hope you don't mind. As they ate, Olivia found herself studying the man across from her. His hands were calloused but clean, his movements economical but graceful. He caught her looking and raised an eyebrow in question. I was just thinking that your letters, thorough as they were, didn't mention how severe the winters are here, she said, covering her embarrassment. Colorado winters can be harsh, he agreed, but spring makes up for it. You should see these mountains in May, wildflowers everywhere, and the air smells sweet enough to bottle. His unexpected poetic turn surprised her. Your letters didn't mention your appreciation for wildflowers either. A slight flush colored his cheeks. There's a lot we don't know about each other yet, he acknowledged, which brings me to something I need to ask. He set down his coffee cup. With the wedding delayed, I want you to know you're still welcome to your own room until then. But I was wondering if you'd be comfortable sharing meals with me, maybe talking in the evenings, getting to know one another properly before we make this official. The suggestion was so reasonable, so considerate that Olivia felt a wave of gratitude. I would like that very much. Relief visibly passed over his features. Good, that's good. After breakfast, he showed her around the cabin more thoroughly, the kitchen with its cast iron stove and well-stocked pantry, the small study where he kept the ranch accounts, and the second bedroom upstairs that he had been converting into a sewing room for the lady of the house. I wasn't sure what you might want, he explained, looking suddenly uncertain, but I thought you should have a space of your own. The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched Olivia deeply. It's perfect, she assured him. Though I should warn you, my needlework is passable at best. Zachary shrugged. Use it for whatever you like. Reading, writing letters, or just having a quiet place away from ranch business. Later that morning, bundled in borrowed clothes much too large for her slender frame, Olivia accompanied Zachary to the barn. The world outside was transformed into a breathtaking white landscape, with the distant mountains standing in sharp relief against the clear blue sky. It's beautiful, she breathed, her words forming clouds in the cold air. Beautiful but dangerous, Zachary cautioned. Never wander far from the buildings in weather like this without telling me where you're going. In the barn, he introduced her to the animals, the draft horses, Thunder and Lightning, the milk cows, Bess and Maybelle, and his prized quarter horse, Colt, who had carried them through the blizzard. And this, he said, leading her to a stall where a sleek chestnut mare stood watching them with intelligent eyes, is Penny. I bought her last spring, thinking she might suit a lady rider. Olivia approached the stall cautiously. The mare stretched her neck forward, sniffing curiously at her outstretched hand. She's lovely, Olivia said, delighted when the horse allowed her to stroke its velvety nose. Though I must confess I've never ridden astride. She's gentle enough for a beginner, Zachary assured her. Once the snow melts some, I can teach you. They spent the rest of the day in surprisingly comfortable domesticity. Olivia helped prepare a hearty stew for lunch while Zachary tended to necessary repairs on a broken harness. In the afternoon, he showed her his small library, clearly pleased when she expressed genuine interest in the volumes of history, natural science, and poetry. My father believed education shouldn't stop at the Mississippi, he explained. He had books shipped out here when most folks were still worried about getting enough ammunition and salt. As dusk approached, they worked together to prepare dinner: venison steaks, potatoes, and canned green beans from Zachary's root cellar. The simple task of cooking alongside him felt strangely intimate, more revealing than hours of conversation might have been. That evening, seated before the fire with coffee laced with a touch of brandy to ward off the chill, they finally began sharing the stories that hadn't fit into their letters. Olivia spoke of her childhood in Boston, her father's importing business, and the financial collapse that had left her orphaned and destitute at 22. After paying father's debts, there was nothing left, she explained, gazing into the flames. My aunt in Philadelphia offered to take me in, but only if I agreed to marry her husband's business associate, a man 40 years my senior with a reputation for cruelty to his previous wives. So you chose to marry a stranger in Colorado instead, Zachary said quietly. She looked up, meeting his eyes directly. I chose to make my own decision rather than have one forced upon me. Your letters were honest, straightforward. You wanted a partner, not a possession. Zachary nodded slowly. My parents had that kind of marriage. Equal partners, each with their own strengths. When they both died of fever 4 years ago, I realized how rare that was. He swirled the liquid in his cup. Most men out here want to cook and someone to warm their bed. I wanted more. The firelight cast shadows across his face, highlighting the vulnerability that his usually stoic expression concealed. Olivia felt something shift between them, a deeper understanding taking root. Tell me about your parents, she encouraged. They sound like remarkable people. His stories painted a picture of pioneers who had come west with the first wave of settlers, building not just a ranch, but helping establish the town of Granite. His father had been a former schoolteacher turned rancher, his mother a midwife whose healing knowledge had saved countless lives. They taught me that success isn't measured by how much land you own or cattle you run, but by what you contribute, he said. Pa always said a man's true worth is in how he treats those who can do nothing for him in return. As the fire burned low and the grandfather clock in the corner chimed 10, Olivia found herself reluctant to end their conversation. In just one day, Zachary Everett had revealed himself to be far more complex and compelling than she had dared hope. We should get some sleep, he finally said, rising to bank the fire. Tomorrow, if the sun keeps shining, we might be able to make it to town. Upstairs, in the quiet of her room, Olivia stood at the window looking out at the moonlit snow. The vast, wild landscape that had seemed so intimidating just a day before now felt full of possibility. She had come west seeking security, a practical arrangement to save herself from poverty. She hadn't expected to find herself drawn to the quiet strength and unexpected gentleness of her soon-to-be husband. It was too soon to call it love, she knew, but it was certainly the foundation for something that could grow into it. The next morning dawned clear and crisp, with sunlight glinting off the snow in diamond brilliance. Zachary had already cleared a path from the house to the barn and saddled the horses by the time Olivia joined him outside. Town's still a difficult ride, he explained, adjusting Penny's saddle for Olivia's smaller frame, but the main trail's passable if we take it slow. Colt and Penny are sure-footed. Olivia eyed the smaller mare with trepidation. Perhaps you should teach me to ride another day. I wouldn't want to slow us down. Zachary regarded her thoughtfully. We don't have to go today if you're not ready. The preacher will still be there tomorrow or next week. His consideration touched her. No, I'd like to go, she said firmly. I just meant perhaps I could ride with you again, as we did during the blizzard, until I learn properly. Something flickered in his eyes, a brief spark quickly controlled. Of course, if you're more comfortable that way. This time, she sat sideways across the saddle, with Zachary's arm securely around her waist. The closeness was both proper and strangely intimate, and Olivia found herself acutely aware of his steady breathing and the warmth of his body against the December chill. The journey to Granite took over an hour, with Zachary pointing out landmarks along the way, the creek that ran through his property, the stand of pine trees where he harvested Christmas trees, the distant peaks with names like Old Baldy and Widow's Peak. There's a homestead just over that rise, he said, gesturing to the east. The Millers, good folks. Martha Miller will likely invite us for dinner once she hears about the wedding. She's been trying to marry me off to one of her nieces for years. Olivia laughed, surprised by his dry humor. Should I be prepared for disappointment from the local ladies, then? Zachary's arm tightened slightly around her waist. The opposite, I expect. They'll be relieved I'm no longer available for matchmaking. As they crested the final hill, the town of Granite came into view. Despite the snow, it was a bustling place larger than Olivia had expected, with a main street lined with false-fronted buildings, including a general store, a hotel, a saloon, and a small church whose white steeple rose above the other structures. "Mining's been good to Granite," Zachary explained as they rode into town. "Silver Strike 10 years ago brought the railroad, and the town's been growing ever since." Curious eyes followed them as Zachary helped Olivia dismount in front of the general store. It was clear from the nods and greetings that he was well known and respected. "Zach Everett, didn't expect to see you after that blizzard," called a portly man sweeping snow from the store's entrance. "George," Zachary acknowledged with a nod. "Had important business." He turned to Olivia. "George Wilson, this is Miss Olivia Blackwell, soon to be Mrs. Everett." George's eyebrows shot up in surprise, but his smile was genuine as he extended a hand to Olivia. "Well now, that's the best news I've heard all winter. Welcome to Granite, Miss Blackwell." Similar exchanges followed as Zachary led Olivia to the church, where Reverend Thomas Peterson, a kindly man with silver hair and wire-rimmed spectacles, greeted them warmly. "A wedding, today?" he asked, looking between them. "Rather sudden, isn't it?" "Not at all," Zachary replied. "We've been corresponding for 6 months. Miss Blackwell arrived from Boston yesterday." Understanding dawned on the preacher's face. "Ah, a mail-order bride arrangement, I see." He turned to Olivia, his expression gentle but probing. "And you're certain about this, my dear?" "Marriage is a sacred covenant, not to be entered into lightly." Olivia met his gaze steadily. "I am certain, Reverend. Mr. Everett and I may not have known each other long in person, but we have built an understanding through our letters. I believe we can build a good life together." Her certainty seemed to satisfy him. "Very well. I can perform the ceremony this afternoon, but you'll need witnesses." "Already arranged," Zachary said. "Dr. Franklin and his wife have agreed to stand with us. We're to meet them at 2 o'clock. With 2 hours before the ceremony, Zachary took Olivia to the general store, where Mrs. Wilson, George's wife, helped her select fabric for new dresses suitable for ranch life. "Colorado winters demand practical clothing," the older woman advised. "But that doesn't mean you can't have a bit of color and style." Zachary excused himself to conduct some business at the bank, promising to return in an hour. In his absence, the women of Granite wasted no time in making Olivia's acquaintance, curious about the Eastern woman who had captured the elusive Zachary Everett. "Never thought I'd see the day," confided Mrs. Peterson, the preacher's wife, as she helped Olivia select buttons. "Not that women haven't tried. Zach's the most eligible bachelor in the county, owns the best land, runs a profitable ranch, and is easy on the eyes to boot. But he's always been so focused on that ranch," added Martha Miller, who had hurried over upon hearing the news. "Turned down my Eliza without even coming to dinner to meet her properly." Olivia absorbed their comments with a mixture of amusement and growing pride. The Zachary they described respected, hardworking, principled matched the man she was coming to know. When he returned precisely on time, Olivia noticed how the room quieted briefly. He carried himself with a natural authority that commanded respect without demanding it. "Ready?" he asked simply, "at the church, doctor." Franklin, a jovial man with a bushy mustache, and his quiet, elegant wife waited to serve as witnesses. The ceremony itself was brief but meaningful, with Reverend Peterson emphasizing the importance of partnership, respect, and commitment. When Zachary placed a simple gold band on her finger, one that had belonged to his mother, he explained in a whisper. Olivia felt a surge of emotion she hadn't expected. This was more than the practical arrangement she had agreed to. It was the beginning of something profound. "I now pronounce you man and wife," Reverend Peterson declared. "You may kiss your bride." Zachary hesitated, his eyes searching hers for permission. Olivia gave an almost imperceptible nod, and he leaned forward, pressing his lips to hers in a kiss that was gentle but lingered just long enough to send warmth spreading through her entire body. News of their marriage spread quickly through the small town, and what had been planned as a quiet dinner at the hotel restaurant became something of a celebration. Townspeople stopped by their table to offer congratulations and introduce themselves to the new Mrs. Everett. Overwhelming, isn't it? Zachary murmured as the latest well-wishers departed. A bit, Olivia admitted, but everyone has been kind. Granite looks after its own, he said, pride evident in his voice, and you're one of us now. The simple statement affected her more deeply than she expected. After months of uncertainty and the painful severance from her former life, she belonged somewhere again. As dusk fell, they began the journey back to the ranch. This time, Olivia rode Penny, with Zachary keeping close beside her on Colt. The mare proved as gentle as promised, responding to even her inexperienced guidance. "You're a natural," Zachary observed as they approached the ranch. "By spring, you'll be riding all over the property without thinking twice about it." The cabin glowed with welcoming light as they returned, Zachary having lit the lamps before they left that morning. Inside, the familiar sense of wood smoke and pine made it feel already like home to Olivia. An awkward silence fell between them as they removed their coats and boots. The easy companionship of the past 2 days was suddenly complicated by their new status as husband and wife, with all that traditionally entailed. "I should check the animals one last time," Zachary said, clearly giving her space. "Make yourself comfortable. This is your home now." When he returned 20 minutes later, Olivia had stoked the fire and was sitting before it, her hair unpinned and cascading down her back. She had changed into her nightgown and robe, modest attire but still more intimate than he had seen before. Zachary paused in the doorway, and Olivia felt his gaze like a physical touch. "I can sleep in the spare room," he offered quietly. "Until you're ready. I meant what I said yesterday. I expect nothing from you that you're not willing to give." Olivia looked up at him, this man who was now her husband, and made a decision. "I think," she said carefully, "that a marriage should begin as it means to go on, with honesty and togetherness." She held out her hand to him. "Stay, please." His expression softened as he crossed the room to take her hand. "Are you certain, Olivia?" "I am," she replied, surprised by her own conviction. "We are husband and wife now. Let us be so in truth." That night, as snow began to fall again outside, Zachary Everett proved himself as considerate and gentle in the marriage bed as he had been in all other matters. In his arms, Olivia discovered feelings she had never expected, a passion that both startled and delighted her, and a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes. Later, as they lay together in the darkness, Zachary's strong arms wrapped protectively around her, Olivia marveled at the strange path that had led her to this place. What had begun as a desperate solution to impossible circumstances now felt like the most fortunate of chances. "What are you thinking?" Zachary murmured against her hair. "That sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the greatest happiness," she answered honestly. "I came west because I had nowhere else to go, but now I can't imagine being anywhere else." He tightened his embrace slightly. "When I sent that letter responding to your advertisement, I hardly dared hope for someone like you. I thought at best I might find a practical woman willing to share my life. I never expected." He trailed off. "Expected what?" she prompted. "To feel this way," he admitted quietly. Like something that was missing has finally fallen into place. His words echoed her own feelings so perfectly that Olivia turned in his arms to face him, though she could barely make out his features in the darkness. "I feel it too," she whispered. "And it terrifies me a little how quickly everything has changed." "We have time," he assured her, "a lifetime to get to know each other properly." As she drifted towards sleep, comfortable and warm in his embrace, Olivia thought that a lifetime with Zachary Everett was a prospect that filled her with joy rather than apprehension. The following weeks passed in a rhythm of discovery and adaptation. Olivia learned the routines of ranch life, the early mornings, and the satisfaction of work completed by one's own hands. Zachary taught her to ride properly, to milk the cows, and to identify the various animal tracks in the snow. In return, she brought organization to his accounts, prepared meals that expanded beyond his bachelor fare, and filled the cabin with small touches that transformed it from a house to a true home: curtains at the windows, a vase of dried wildflowers on the table, and arrangements that made the space more functional and welcoming. Their evenings were spent before the fire, sometimes reading aloud to each other from Zachary's books, sometimes simply talking about their day. And each night, they retired together to the bedroom they now shared, their physical connection growing as naturally as their emotional one. January brought more snow and bitterly cold temperatures that kept them close to the ranch. February introduced Olivia to the concept of cabin fever, when 3 consecutive blizzards prevented any travel for nearly 2 weeks. "This is why I ordered so many supplies before winter set in," Zachary explained when she marveled at the well-stocked root cellar and pantry. "The first winter I spent out here alone, I ran out of coffee by February and nearly rode into town in a blizzard just to get more. My father always said a man who doesn't prepare for winter doesn't deserve to see spring." Spring, when it finally arrived in late March, transformed the landscape dramatically. The snowdrifts receded, revealing muddy ground that soon burst with new growth. By April, the mountains that had seemed so forbidding in December were carpeted with wildflowers, just as Zachary had promised. On a particularly beautiful day in early May, Zachary suggested they pack a picnic and ride to his favorite spot on the property, a small meadow beside a creek, sheltered by aspens whose new leaves shimmered like gold coins in the breeze. As they spread a blanket on the fresh grass, Olivia reflected on how much had changed in 5 short months. She had arrived in Colorado a desperate woman seeking security. Now, she was a confident ranch wife who could ride astride, help with calving, and even shoot a rifle if necessary, skills she never imagined needing in Boston. More importantly, she had found in Zachary not just a provider but a true partner and, to her continual amazement, a passionate lover whose tenderness never failed to move her. "What's that smile about?" Zachary asked, handing her a plate with slices of cold chicken and bread. "I was just thinking about how different my life is now from what I expected," she replied, "and how grateful I am for it." He settled beside her on the blanket. "Different good or different bad, different wonderful," she assured him, leaning over to kiss him lightly. "Though I never imagined I'd be the kind of woman who could help deliver a calf or ride for hours without complaint." Zachary grinned, the expression transforming his usually serious face. "And I never imagined I'd be the kind of man who looks forward to coming home as much as going out to work." He took her hand, his expression growing more serious. "You've changed me, Olivia, for the better, I think." "We've changed each other," she corrected gently. "That's what a good marriage does, isn't it? Helps both people become more than they were alone." He nodded, seeming to consider something carefully before speaking again. "I have something to ask you, something I've been thinking about for a while." The gravity in his tone made Olivia set aside her plate. "What is it? When we married, it was an arrangement practical and sensible. But now—" He paused, uncharacteristically hesitant. "Now I find myself hoping for more than practicality between us." Olivia's heart quickened. "What do you mean, I love you?" he said simply, the words carrying all the weight of his character, straightforward, honest, and true. "I didn't expect to, but I do, and I wanted you to know." Tears sprang to Olivia's eyes, not from sadness but from a joy so intense it was almost painful. "Oh, Zach, I love you too. I think I have for months, but I was afraid to say it, afraid it was too soon or that you might not feel the same." The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise over the mountains, radiant and full of promise. He pulled her into his arms, his kiss far less restrained than usual, filled with the passion he typically reserved for their bedroom. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Zachary rested his forehead against hers. "I never thought I'd find this," he confessed quietly. "After my parents died, I thought the ranch would be enough, but you've shown me how much more life can be." They spent the afternoon in that meadow, talking about their hopes and plans for the future in a way they never had before. Zachary spoke of expanding the ranch, perhaps adding sheep to their cattle operation. Olivia shared her idea of starting a small garden for fresh vegetables and maybe planting an apple orchard on the south slope. As the sun began its descent toward the mountains, casting long golden rays across the meadow, Zachary helped Olivia to her feet. Instead of gathering their picnic things immediately, he kept hold of her hands. "There's something else," he said, "something I've been waiting to tell you." "What is it?" she asked, noticing a hint of nervousness in his usual confidence. "Doctor. Franklin came by yesterday while you were visiting Martha Miller. I asked him some questions about symptoms you've been having. The tiredness, the queasiness in the mornings." Olivia's breath caught. She had noticed these changes herself but hadn't wanted to hope. "He couldn't say for certain without examining you," Zachary continued, "but he thinks. That is, he believes you might be." He swallowed hard. "Olivia, he thinks you're carrying our child." Joy burst through her like a summer thunderstorm, powerful and all-encompassing. "A baby, truly." Zachary nodded, his own eyes suspiciously bright. "He said the timing fits with what you described. Late September or early October, he guessed." Olivia pressed a hand to her still flat stomach, overwhelmed by the knowledge that a new life grew within her, the physical manifestation of their love. "A baby," she repeated, the word itself a prayer of gratitude. Zachary gathered her carefully into his arms as though she had suddenly become fragile. "Are you happy about this? I know we hadn't spoken much about children yet." "Happy," she laughed through her tears. "Zach, I'm overjoyed. A child of our own, a family. It's more than I ever dared hope for when I stepped off that stagecoach in December." Their ride home was slower, more cautious, with Zachary frequently checking to ensure Olivia was comfortable. His protective instincts, always strong, had doubled with the news of her pregnancy. That evening, seated before the fire in what had become their customary position, Olivia leaning against Zachary's chest. His arms around her, they spoke of names and preparations, and all the ways their lives would change with the arrival of their child. "My mother always said that babies bring their own love with them," Zachary mused, his hand gently covering the place where their child grew. "That each new life expands your heart in ways you can't imagine until it happens." "She sounds very wise," Olivia said softly. "I wish I could have known her. She would have loved you," he assured her. "Almost as much as I do." As spring turned to summer, Olivia's body changed with the seasons. Her slender frame softened, and by July, there was no hiding the gentle swell of her abdomen. The women of Granite rallied around her, sharing advice and hand-me-down baby clothes, while the men clapped Zachary on the back and offered cigars to celebrate his impending fatherhood. Martha Miller organized a quilting bee, where the women of the town created a beautiful blanket for the baby, each square representing a different family's good wishes. Dr. Franklin made regular visits to the ranch, monitoring Olivia's health with paternal concern. Meanwhile, Zachary threw himself into preparations with characteristic thoroughness. He converted the spare room into a nursery, crafting a cradle from aspen wood with such care that Olivia often found him working late into the night, sanding each piece until it was satin smooth. "The baby won't notice if there are rough spots," she teased gently one evening. "I'll notice," he replied without looking up from his work. "Our child deserves the best I can provide." His dedication touched her deeply. This man, who had once seemed so stern and reserved, now revealed depths of tenderness that continually surprised her. The changes to their relationship were subtle but significant. Zachary became more openly affectionate, less constrained by his natural reticence. Olivia found herself more confident, more willing to make decisions about the ranch without seeking his approval first, a development he encouraged. "This is your home as much as mine," he reminded her when she apologized for rearranging the storage pantry. "More than mine, really. I just lived here." "You've made it a home." As her pregnancy progressed, their physical relationship adapted but didn't diminish. Zachary's desire for her seemed only to grow with her changing body, and he found creative ways to express his passion while keeping her comfortable and safe. "You're even more beautiful now," he whispered one night as they lay together in the moonlight that streamed through their bedroom window. "Carrying our child. There's nothing more precious to me." Late summer brought a bountiful harvest from Olivia's vegetable garden. Her first attempt at growing food had been surprisingly successful, yielding more tomatoes, beans, and corn than they could eat fresh. She spent long days canning and preserving, preparing for the winter ahead. Zachary expanded the chicken coop and added 2 milk goats to their livestock, thinking ahead to the additional food needed for their growing family. He also hired a local boy, 16-year-old Timothy Wagner, to help with the heavier ranch work as Olivia's pregnancy advanced. "I don't want you worrying about the cattle or the horses," he explained when she protested that they couldn't afford help. "The ranch is doing well enough to pay Tim's wages, and it gives me more time at home with you." As September arrived, bringing cooler temperatures and the first hints of autumn color to the aspen groves, Olivia felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The baby would arrive soon, a reality that filled her with both joy and fear. What if something goes wrong? She confessed her worries to Zachary one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "We're so far from town from Dr. Franklin." Zachary took her hand, his thumb tracing soothing circles on her palm. "Martha Miller has delivered more babies than the doctor." "She's already agreed to stay with us when your time comes," he smiled reassuringly. "Besides, you're strong and healthy, and this baby is half Everett. We're known for arriving on time and without fuss." His confidence eased her fears somewhat, but as the days passed and her body grew increasingly uncomfortable, Olivia found herself impatient for the ordeal to begin. She didn't have to wait long. On a crisp October morning with frost silvering the grass and the mountains aflame with autumn colors, Olivia woke to the first contractions. "It's time," she told Zachary, who was instantly alert beside her. The next 12 hours passed in a blur of pain and determination. True to his word, Zachary had Martha Miller there within an hour, and the experienced midwife took charge with calm efficiency. "You're doing beautifully," Martha assured Olivia during a particularly difficult contraction, "just as nature intended." Zachary refused to leave her side despite Martha's initial suggestion that men traditionally waited elsewhere. "My place is here," he said firmly, "unless Olivia wants me gone." "Stay," Olivia managed between breaths. "Please stay." His steady presence anchored her through the waves of pain. He wiped her brow, supported her back, and murmured constant encouragement in a voice that never betrayed any fear he might have felt. As afternoon faded into evening, Martha announced that the time had come to push. Olivia gathered her remaining strength, drawing courage from Zachary's unwavering support. "I can see the head," Martha reported. "Dark hair just like its papa." 3 more pushes and their child slipped into the world with a lusty cry that filled the room. A boy. Martha exclaimed, quickly wrapping the squalling infant in the quilt the women had made. "A fine, strong boy." She placed the baby on Olivia's chest, and the world seemed to stop for a moment as Olivia beheld her son's face for the first time. Tiny features scrunched in displeasure at his abrupt entrance into the world gradually relaxed as he felt his mother's warmth. "Hello, little one," Olivia whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We've been waiting for you." When she looked up at Zachary, she saw that he too was weeping unashamedly, his expression a mixture of awe, relief, and love so profound it transcended words. "He's perfect," he said hoarsely, reaching out to gently touch his son's downy head. "Just like his mother." Later, after Martha had helped clean up and ensure both mother and baby were doing well, she tactfully withdrew to the spare room, leaving the new family alone together. Zachary sat on the edge of the bed, watching as Olivia nursed their son for the first time. The intimacy of the moment, his wife cradling their child in the soft lamplight, imprinted itself on his heart forever. "What shall we name him?" Olivia asked softly, looking up from the baby's peaceful face. They had discussed various options over the past months, but had never settled on a final choice. "What about Samuel?" Zachary suggested. "After my father, Samuel James Everett." Olivia tested the name, looking down at the infant whose tiny hand was wrapped around her finger with surprising strength. "Samuel," she repeated. "I like it. Strong but gentle, like his father." Zachary's smile was tender as he leaned forward to kiss her forehead. "And James for your father," he added, "so he carries both our families with him." "Samuel James Everett," Olivia agreed. "Welcome to the world, little one." The days that followed were a blend of exhaustion and exhilaration as they adjusted to life with a newborn. Zachary proved himself an enthusiastic, if sometimes awkward father, insisting on taking the baby in the early morning hours so Olivia could rest. She often woke to find him walking the floor with Samuel cradled against his broad chest, speaking to him in low tones about the ranch, the mountains, and all the things he would teach him as he grew. News of Samuel's birth spread quickly through Granite, and visitors soon arrived bearing gifts and good wishes. George and Mrs. Wilson brought a hand-carved wooden horse. Reverend and Mrs. Peterson delivered a small Bible with Samuel's name and birthdate carefully inscribed on the flyleaf. Dr. Franklin came to check on mother and child, pronouncing both in excellent health. As winter approached once again, the small family settled into new routines. The cabin, which had seemed so spacious when Olivia first arrived, now felt perfectly sized for their family of 3. The crackling fire in the hearth, the gentle creaking of the cradle, and the soft sounds of their son created a symphony of contentment that filled Olivia with gratitude every day. On a snowy December evening, almost exactly 1 year after Olivia had first stepped off the stagecoach into Zachary's life, they celebrated their first Christmas as a family. The cabin was festive with pine boughs and red ribbons, and a small tree stood in the corner, adorned with paper ornaments and a star Zachary had carved from aspen wood. After they had exchanged simple gifts, a new hat Olivia had ordered from Denver for Zachary, and a delicate silver locket containing a lock of Samuel's hair for her, they sat together before the fire, their son sleeping peacefully in his father's arms. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night?" Olivia asked, leaning her head against Zachary's shoulder. "Welcome home, let me warm you," he smiled at the memory. "You were half frozen and looking at me like I might be some kind of wild man." "I was terrified," she admitted. "Not of you exactly, but of everything, the unknown, the wilderness, the life I'd committed myself to sight unseen." "And now?" he asked, his voice soft with emotion. Olivia looked around at the home they had built together, not just the physical structure but the life it contained, the love that filled every corner. "Now I know that home isn't a place," she said, reaching up to touch his face tenderly. "It's wherever we're together, you, me, and Samuel." Zachary turned his head to kiss her palm, his eyes conveying more than words ever could. "When I sent that letter responding to your advertisement, I was looking for a practical solution to my solitude," he said. "Instead, I found everything I never knew I needed." Samuel stirred in his arms, tiny fists stretching upward as his eyes fluttered open. Olivia watched as Zachary gently soothed their son back to sleep, his large hands confident and gentle. "You ever regret it?" she asked suddenly. "Taking a chance on a stranger from Boston?" Zachary looked at her with such profound love that the answer was evident before he spoke. "Not for a single moment," he said. "You stepped off that stagecoach into a blizzard and somehow managed to bring spring with you to the ranch and to my heart." Outside, snow fell softly, blanketing the world in pristine white much as it had the day they met. Inside, the fire crackled and Samuel's gentle breathing created a peaceful counterpoint to the winter silence. Olivia Everett, once a desperate young woman with few options, now found herself exactly where she was meant to be in the arms of a man who loved her completely, with their child sleeping between them and a future spread before them as vast and promising as the Colorado sky. "I love you, Zachary Everett," she whispered, leaning up to kiss him. "Thank you for warming me that day and every day since." His answering kiss held all the passion and tenderness that had grown between them over their year together. "And I love you, Olivia Everett." More than I ever thought possible. As the grandfather clock chimed midnight, marking the exact anniversary of her arrival, Olivia silently thanked whatever fate or providence had led her to this remote Colorado ranch and the arms of the man who had become her everything. The years that followed brought both joys and challenges to the Everett family. Their ranch prospered, expanding to include not just cattle but a profitable sheep operation that Olivia helped manage with growing expertise. Samuel grew into a sturdy, curious boy with his father's quiet strength and his mother's quick intelligence. 2 years after Samuel's birth, Olivia delivered twin girls Elizabeth and Catherine, whose arrival nearly doubled the family overnight. Zachary took to fatherhood with even greater confidence, somehow managing to balance the demands of the ranch with his determination to be present for every milestone in his children's lives. As their family grew, so did the town of Granite. The silver boom brought new businesses and families, transforming the once remote mining settlement into a thriving community. Zachary's reputation as a fair businessman and dedicated family man earned him a position on the town council, where his practical wisdom helped guide Granite through the challenges of rapid growth. Olivia found her own place in the community, starting a small library in a corner of the general store that eventually expanded into a proper building with books donated from as far away as San Francisco. Her background in Eastern refinement, combined with her hard-earned Western resilience, made her a natural bridge between the established ranching families and the newcomers seeking fortune in the mines. Through it all, their partnership remained the foundation of everything they built. The practical arrangement that had begun with a desperate young woman stepping off a stagecoach into a blizzard had transformed into a love story that locals would recount for generations, the Boston lady and the Colorado rancher who found in each other exactly what they needed, though neither had known to look for it. On their 10th wedding anniversary, with their children tucked into bed and the ranch quiet under a blanket of December snow, Zachary presented Olivia with a journal bound in soft leather. "What's this?" she asked, running her fingers over the unmarked cover. "I found it among my mother's things," he explained. "She always said that the best stories should be preserved." His eyes, still as blue and direct as the day they met, held hers with unwavering love. "I thought you might want to write ours." Olivia opened the journal to find the first page already inscribed in Zachary's neat handwriting. December 15, 1876. A mail-order bride stepped off into snow. The cowboy said, "Welcome home, let me warm you," and so began the greatest adventure of our lives. Tears filled her eyes as she closed the journal and placed it carefully on the table beside them. "Our story isn't finished yet," she said, reaching for his hand. "Not by a long way." Zachary pulled her into his embrace, his kiss as passionate as it had been on their wedding day. "No," he agreed when they finally broke apart. "We're just getting started." Outside, snow continued to fall on the ranch that had become not just a home but the center of a world built on love, respect, and the courage to take chances. Inside, Zachary and Olivia Everett held each other close, grateful for the blizzard that had brought them together and the warmth they had created that would sustain them through all the seasons of their lives.